What is going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of 8 Cubes on Lambie Series' channel. He's over there. I remembered which direction to point this time. You can see me figure it out in real time. One thing you won't need to see me figure out in real time is this new Marvel Snap meta, which after the OTA is all different, and we're going to tell you all about it. Lambie, we're going to start it off with Werewolf by Night. Where are you with maybe the scariest card they've ever buffed?
Right, so this card is really crazy right now. Crazy not because it's just the best thing to do. It's not the best thing to do, I feel. Okay, let's put it out there first. But I feel like it's very interesting because this card just like enables so many different things right now. Like when it comes to bounce related strategies, I feel like this is like the best thing to do on turn 3. Like it's even better to do than like just play Bishop on curve as well. But what is not like the best thing to do, contrary to popular belief, which a lot of people thought was gonna be the best thing to do, was like Loki bounce. Like Loki bounce with Werewolf when I tested it, it just felt like lackluster, I would say. Like it felt like if you do not specifically draw the wolf on turn 3, which I want to get into a bit later again, the fact that it's 3-1 and no longer 3-3, is actually a really big deal. And there's a lot of like other things that you would rather do on other turns if you do not draw the wolf on turn 3. Like drawing a wolf on turn 4, on turn 5, you kind of just never play the wolf. It's like too slow and too weak. So I would say even though it's just very early into the format and I've only done a little bit of experimenting, I think Loki bounce Wolf is probably not the direction we want to go. Wolf though I have run it in like Surfer and also in Annihilus clock stuff. I think in the clock related bounce stuff, I think it's actually not too bad. Because you have a lot of cheap on reviews. Annihilus is on review, Sentry is on review, Hood is also on review. So I think those like kind of pair in really well with like the wolf. What do you think, KM? What about you? Have you had any success with this wolf right now?
My expectations for Werewolf were that it would be a good bounce card, and
Mm-hmm.
because of the way I expected the meta to look, a bad Loki card, or not necessarily a bad Loki card, but Loki just wouldn't be where I want to be, wouldn't be where I wanted to be on day one. And the reasons for that is I kind of expected the day one meta to involve a lot of people playing just basic bounce and a lot of people playing things like Hela. And Loki does not match up well into basic bounce. It does not match up well into Hela. And so it just sort of seems like that might be the culprit rather than Werewolf being necessarily bad in the list. It's more just like Loki is poorly positioned. If you were going to play Loki, why wouldn't you just play Bounce, which does pretty much the same thing, except it also has a reasonable Loki matchup because there's just not enough good stuff for the Loki to get. And so you end up in this spot with Werewolf where I think it could be a good bounce card, but at the same time, I actually had more success without it in my deck than with it. I tried a bunch of different bounce decks, and it's like, Werewolf is cool, but one thing that it's really bad about is when you're doing Werewolf stuff, it's very difficult to throw priority. And one of the major strengths of the bounce deck is that it has so many points that can go so many places on the final turn of the game, and it's very hard to interact with those points because they don't have priority. This is the thing that everyone was afraid of when Eliath got nerfed, when everyone was running around like, oh, this will just make it so that everyone's going to throw priority and everyone's going to play bounce again. And it's like, that's not true. But when it has enough points, that becomes true, right? That becomes true because of Sage. That becomes true to some degree because of Werewolf, but I really do think a lot of it is just on Sage, who is a massive upgrade to those decks. And so now they have a ton of points, a ton of ability to throw priority, and very little ability to be punished for it. And Werewolf is a fine card in there. I don't think he's bad or anything. He's fine. He's better than Bishop, probably. But it's easier to throw Prio with Bishop. And he's a lot easier to think about, too.
Yeah, I also want to add one more thing which I mentioned earlier regarding Wolf on turn 3, right? Like now as much as yes, it's better than Wolf as a 4 cost because well Zabu is kind of bad right now, but Wolf on turn 3 is literally when you really must draw the Wolf. Like in the Loki deck specifically when I tried it out Loki bounce, if you don't draw Wolf on turn 3, you kind of still want to play Loki on turn 4, right? And then when you play Loki on turn 4, you kind of just get rid of all the cheap on reviews you have in your deck anyway, and then when your opponent's deck is not exactly the same deck as yours, you won't get to use the Wolf, and there's not much mileage you have with the Wolf because you just swapped your hand for stuff that might not be as many on reviews as your original deck. So so Wolf on turn 3 actually is like the thing that you really must do with Wolf right now, and Loki bounce doesn't really support that like that well. That's the interesting thing. Whereas for Annihilus bounce, I guess because you do keep a lot of your deck, like the cheap cards that you can play like after turn 3. So I think for Annihilus bounce, it's at least a little bit better and doesn't feel so awkward, right? To play Wolf. It's really interesting. Like I really thought that Loki Wolf would be like that deck, like the deck. But like the more I play, the more I feel like it's just a little bit awkward right now. I guess the meta has shifted a bit since
Yeah,
the
it's
last
the
time it was kind of
matchups,
good.
right? Like you're
Yeah,
just
it's the
running
matchup.
into like bounce and it's just like, oh, Loki sucks here and they have more points than me when I don't Loki, or Hella and it's just like, oh, Loki sucks here and they have more points than me. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, great. Great metagame, guys. You also wanted to talk about Silver Surfer. I have no experience playing this deck right now. I played against it a couple times, and it's like, because I was doing some clog stuff, I was pretty good into it. They tend to still be like brood decks, and so I was playing like debris and just kind of ruining them. And it was like, okay, I feel good about this. But it does seem like the kind of deck where it's like there's a lot of reasonable tools in that list for sure, in a way that I think is very unique. Like typically decks like Surfer, Cerebro 3, where the deck is sort of deck building on rails for you, they don't necessarily have enough interaction to really get themselves over the top. And one card that I think I specifically want to highlight is Shadow King out of Silver Surfer, which can really help drag your opponents down. That is a dangerous card to put in your deck right now, even though you're a lot of green power yourself. Having a Shadow King can really be helpful. Being able to play a Cosmo, which is good into the bounce decks, that can really be helpful. Prevent their Hitmonkey, prevent their Sage, a bunch of stuff, right? A lot of interesting and relevant tech cards in that deck.
Yeah, from now on, let's just call like any buff green power. I like how it sounds, green power.
Yeah,
Like
green
anything
power.
that gives additional stats, let's just call it green power. But yeah, no, this deck fits Shadow King really well. In fact, this deck actually can run. Why I wanted to highlight Surfer specifically was I feel like now, as much as I'm not the Surfer guy, like I don't look at any 3-cost card and be like, oh, this is a Surfer card. No, I don't do that. But like I do think Surfer has a lot of relevant tools right now that are just good cards, right? Let's name a few. Like Red Guardian, we've been talking about it for a long time. It's just a good card that you can play in any deck that's also a 3-cost. Sage, Sage, we underrated it a little bit. It's actually a really, really good card. There also obviously is a 3-cost
It's
that
sort of
fits in
hard.
Surfer,
Like,
right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like, this is something that's been pissing me off. It's like, everyone's like, oh, you
Yeah,
underrated Sage. And it's like, well, no, we didn't. They nerfed Leech. Like,
true.
they nerfed Leech, and now Bounce is everywhere. I don't really know if we underrated Sage. I made a video that was like, this is an amazing card in Bounce. This is a Bounce card. Get it if you like Bounce. And now Bounce is good. I feel like we're on the right side of history on that, honestly.
Well, okay, this one is more personally me. I did think that it wasn't gonna be that good, like when it came out. I actually did.
Oh.
But the moment I tested it, I was like, okay, no, this is good. Yeah.
Yeah,
The moment I tested it.
you play it one time
Yeah.
and it's like 12 powered, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. The funny thing about Surfer is also not just the 3-cost cards. Like, cause Surfer was always awkward, right? Like on your turn 4 or like turn 5, you had to pair a 3-cost with like a 2-cost. But now there's so many like just good 2-cost cards you can play. So you can play White Widow. You can play obviously Jeff. You can even consider Ravonna, because Ravonna works with Sage, and to a certain extent, if you want to play Werewolf in your Surfer deck, it also kind of works. So like I'm just saying, like Surfer now probably has like a certain ability to shine. I don't know what the build is. This video was like recorded like less than 24 hours after the new patch, right? But like I do think there is like definitely a build of Surfer there that is like better than the rest. I haven't found it. I hope someone finds it, and it'll be it could be something. Could be
I would
something.
personally keep an eye on Yo Woody for that. He was
Yeah.
someone who like pioneered Werewolf Surfer last time. He's
Mhm.
someone who I trust to like be investigating it and be doing well with it. So if you're looking for that, that's someone I would definitely look for.
Yep. Also, one more good card that we forgot to mention, Nocturne. Oh my god, Nocturne is
Oh
just a straight
god,
up Surfer card right
she
now.
rocks. Ravonna Renslayer is a card that I think is one of the better cards in the game right now, which is very weird because my read on this card has always been, if this card's ever good, we're probably really mad about it. But I'm not that mad about it. It's just that like a lot of the stuff she enables is like particularly not fun. Turn 4 Profexes, early Goblins, a lot of Clog stuff, Mr. Negative. I'll give Mr. Negative some fun. That's a fun deck, fine, sure. But like a lot of what she's doing is just like, we're using her to turbo out things that say your opponent can't play cards. And that is a very valuable thing to do right now. A lot of Marvel Snap has become about that in recent months. And I think especially after Leech got nerfed, like there's a lot of like sort of flux in finding the best Cannonball deck, and she might very well be in it.
Yeah, so my take on Ravonna is that like she's the not too unfair Zabu, like pre-nerf Zabu, which is basically what I'm trying to say is that she does give a lot of reasonable and like relevant reductions to certain powerful cards in the game. But if you look at it carefully, you realize that all these cards that she gives like discounts to, they don't all fit in the same deck, which is I think one of the reasons why she's like still kept at bay. Because let's look at like some cards that she reduces that are good, right? Professor X obviously, and then the next one I want to say is straight up Angela. Angela and Prof X don't really fit in the same deck, right? Like imagine if you could play
They
both in the
do.
same deck.
They do. There's the safety blade deck where like I think it's like pretty okay. It's not my favorite version of Clog, but it's definitely a viable version of Clog, which is basically using Havoc, Angela, Profex, Goblins alongside a Cannonball package. So you get to fuse that with Hope. So you get to use Hope to avoid the Havoc, and then you can go like turn 5 Havoc Profex, and always when the Profex lane Cannonball someone anyway because you have a Hope Summers. Like
true.
I've seen that. It is a thing. It's a I don't know, like I think it's a good deck, but I don't know if the stats have ever backed that up.
Yeah, I haven't really encountered that one much. Like, I'm just thinking from the perspective of like a lot of what like Zabu used to do and made it really very unfair. Like in general, just every 4-cost card just benefits from this, right? But like, I feel like when it comes to Ravonna, like you need a very specific like direction you're going for, like the cards that she reduces to be really good. Like if you want to go Sage and you want to go Angela, that's like maybe one deck. I guess Professor X is also a reduction, but like I haven't really seen that many like Professor X Angela decks outside of the one that you mentioned.
That's the only one.
It's a specific one,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I mean we've never really been talking about like, okay, we also can technically use Ravonna to reduce Werewolf, but the funny thing is like all these things like Ravonna is a turn 2 play and then you reduce Werewolf to 2 costs, but Werewolf is going to be played on turn 3 anyway, so like it's like she has reductions but it doesn't blow out the game because of her reductions. I think outside of Professor X, none of her reductions actually just blow out the game, so I think that's what's keeping her at bay.
I think you're making a really good point here, because when you compare her to Zabu, first of all, she's way more limited. But second of all, her win conditions are all face up. There's no hidden Shang-Chi Darkhawk stuff, right? Where you're just like, I win 2 lanes on turn 6. There's a Professor X on the board, you know what's going on, right? Like there's none of that. They're like, so she is, I think, fixed Zabu. She's much more limiting and she's much less cube equity. But I mean, in exchange, she is probably like more frustrating because of working with Profex, working with Goblins, working with Cannonball, all the stuff that's like particularly odious about this, about like Marvel Snap right now. A lot of like Alioth type cards, she kind of goes with a lot of them. And I think it's actually interesting that when she first came out, everyone was like, oh, I know, I'll play this with like Iron Man and Mystique, and it turns out that's just ass, just completely terrible. Like you can't do, it's not good at that, and it's actually just a turn 4 Profex machine. Okay, so Hela's back
for sure.
Oh my God.
Okay, so this was inevitable, like quite literally, right? The moment they put Leech back to a 5/5. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Leech because I think it's really relevant here. Like Leech was only ever good because it was a 4 cost and then you could blink it away, right? Now when it shares the same cost as like almost every other good card in the many good cards in the game cost 5, and Leech is like the least important one out of all of them. Now that he shares the same cost as them again, he's gonna be a lot less played. It's generally just gonna be awkward to play Leech as well, which means Hela just comes back because there's no random like turn 4 leech that like gets your Hela that's in your hand. And then the funny thing is now if you leech that Hela deck on turn 5 and they play Corvus, they can like, literally play Hela on the turn that you play your 5 mana leech because they did play their Corvus. So it's like that's one more reason why your leech is worse, even though like it's worse even though if you choose to play it into Hela. So like I really think like Hela is just scary right now because firstly people will try to play a bit of Loki, right? Like I mean I did say that like Loki Wolf was not really the thing to do, but people will still definitely try it. And because people play more Loki, Hela's just a natural predator of Loki. And of course now with Leech being like pushed to the wayside again, Hela will definitely come back as the like de facto casino. I don't even really want to call it combo because like it's not really a combo, it's just discarding things and then playing the Hela. So like it's back, and it's scary, and I wish you all the best if you have to deal with it.
It's quite frustrating to have Blink come out, become a counter to Hela, and then go back to being an only Hela card. The only Blinks I saw today were in Hela, and her inclusion in that deck is like very good for that deck because like you're basically almost all the time you're at least 50% to just like get the Hela, right? maybe 33%. You have outs basically all the time because of that. And that is just a crazy thing. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely crazy and tough to deal with that card. It is a very powerful deck that I think is just as scary and annoying as it was, and it forced me, among other things, like the fact that I was seeing so much Hella, so much bounce, is what pushed me onto being a Profex deck. I just didn't want to deal with that anymore. I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? Like Bling is just straight up a hella card right now. Like there's so much upside because like if you Bling a Lady Sif, the worst thing you get is a Jubilee, and Jubilee will pull a 6, and the 6 could be hella. Or like if you Bling the Jubilee herself, you get like a 5 or 6. You get the 6, which is like the hella, or like I don't know, something really big regardless. So like it's really very hella of a card right now. Like I'm pretty sure people will still play like Jubilee Blink in like mid range decks, but like the upside to playing it in hella is so much it's like so much better right now.
Yeah. Bounce. So I had the most success with Bounce with a traditional Bounce build without Werewolf. I have no real explanation for that other than I think it's better at throwing priority and maybe I just drew a little better. I don't really know, but like that seemed pretty good to me. But I also played some Werewolf Darkhawk Bounce, which was like okay. I played like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 games and I won most of them. I was like 6-1 or something. And like that was fun. It was cool. It struck me again, it's like there's probably 18 cards that a bounce deck can reasonably run. And
Yeah.
figuring out the right 12 is, I think, actually very difficult right now. Because
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think bounce is in a very interesting spot whereby you kind of have to choose the direction you want to go. I don't actually think that like werewolf actually fits in the classic Mysterio bounce because like just because Mysterio just clogs you up so much, right? You don't really want to be doing that. And like the kinds of bounce that I think werewolf fits in is like Annihilus bounce. Specifically
Right.
now I'm looking at really Annihilus bounce because you have a lot of cheap on reveals. Your win conditions are on reviews, right? Sentry, Annihilus. Yeah, I think that's the deck that fits it the best. And of course, like Beast and Falcon, or mainly Beast, actually works really well in like the Annihilus deck. Cause like worst case you also can bounce your void, right? And then the wolf will move as well. So I do think that that's the deck that you would really want to be focusing your sights on when you play like wolf in bounce.
Yeah, I think the way I think about bounce as a whole is there's sort of 3 directions you can take it.
Yeah.
And direction number 1 is Elsa Bloodstone Mysterio. Right? That's a whole deck. Direction number 2 is Darkhawk stuff. And direction number 3 is Annihilus stuff. I tried the first 2. I haven't tried the third one yet because I was like, I am so sick of this, I'm going to go play Professor X instead. So I'll get around to it, I'm sure. But with the list you showed me, I was like, that's exciting. I like what's going on there. I like everything that's happening here. I'm interested in it. So I will pencil myself down as intrigued.
Yep. So the list that KMBest is talking about will be up on my Twitter by the time this video goes up.
So let's talk about the other stuff Annihilus can do. I've been talking about like doing my like Daredevil Profex stuff. I went back to an older list. I was like, okay, I am sick of Hella. I am sick of Bounce. I want to play a Debris Mysterio Mockingbird deck. And so I just rebuilt like the old version of the deck we affectionately have nicknamed Dick and Butt because it was made by a player named Butt and a player named Jimmy Dickens about a month ago. That deck is basically a like the 1/1 drop is the Hood, and then you have like White Widow, Daredevil, Jeff, Mysterio, Debris, and then you have like your typical Annihilus top end. You have a Mockingbird in there. You have Cannonball Profex, and I was just there's so many weird things happening on a day 1 meta that I was like, I do not want to take chances about this. I am going to play Daredevil Prof. I don't want to deal with any of the weirdness that a bounce deck can create because a bounce deck is very good at creating like will they, won't they scenarios. Very good at it. And I didn't want to deal with any of that at all. So I got the Daredevil in there and I had like a 69% win rate with it. So that was pretty good, right? Like Annihilus is still a damn good card, even with the Sentry getting nerfed.
Yeah, okay, so the point that you ended on was exactly the point that I wanted to start on, which is crazy also because we always knew Annihilus into a Sentry into Annihilus was powerful, right? In terms of the swing that it would give. Now when the Sentry is nerfed to like 4-8 and the Void is like a -8. Like I played so much of this deck like in the hours before we recorded this, and like it's really goes to show how powerful Sentry into Annihilus is. Like now, even when I do Sentry into Annihilus, I still feel like super winning. Like even with the nerf Sentry, I still think it's insane, right? Like, and of course, Annihilus being just okay, honestly, as much as Sentry Annihilus is like the most powerful thing to do, it's so telegraphed. What I've been doing so much is just like I Annihilus on 5 with my random hood on the board,
Yep.
randomly clock, randomly give you -3, and it's like a 5/9. Okay, wait, it's more than a 5. Yeah, it's like a 5/9 swing and it clocks the board. Like Annihilus has this very interesting like thing whereby
It's
it's
like a
just
5/12 swing because you're
yeah, it's
losing
an
-3 and
okay
they're gaining -3.
yeah, it's like an okay statted 5 drop, but like its synergies are just so powerful with respect to like Marvel Snap, right? Board clock and then like making your opponent lose power while you sort of gain back power. Like it's just such a strong card. And I don't know when we said this, but I think we can say it again right now. I think this card going down to 5/5 will actually not really reduce its play rate.
Right. Like someone in my comments actually said what they should do is make it so Annihilus doesn't destroy if it doesn't hit. And I thought
That's true.
about that and I was like, doesn't that just kill it? Like, isn't that card just dead now?
I mean that's true, but
Like,
oh, yeah, that actually makes it way worse. Yeah, you're
it
right.
would work.
That makes
It's
it
just
way
like I'm
worse.
pretty sure you just kill the card. And so
True.
then it's like, what are you even supposed to do about it? Do we take it to 5/4? Like, what are you supposed to do about this card to make it like? I do think it's meaningfully worse. It's just like when you're able to play a deck with Daredevil and pin them between Professor X and Annihilus, that's so mean. Like you could just put people in no-win situations and you know everything that could possibly happen. It's horrifying. It's a horrifying spot. And I don't know exactly what to do to fix Annihilus. They mentioned this in the patch notes. They were like, we tried to like figure out an Annihilus thing that worked, and none of it felt appealing to us.
I mean, I don't think they can do that whole like make the stuff not destroy if your opponent's location is clocked thing. That just like you're right, that just obliterates the card. Like I would
A
not
little
want to
bit,
play that
yeah.
card, right? But at the same time, doesn't it feel so icky and weird if it becomes a 5/4? Like that's just like so try hard, man. I'm trying so hard to make this card bad without killing it. Let's make it 5/4. But that feels so horrible to just to think about. Like what can it really do though? Is there any other like effect change that
I
it can
mean,
make without
knocking it
obliterating
to
the card?
5/5 wouldn't hurt. It
Yeah,
wouldn't
well,
hurt.
5/4 just feels ill. Like
It wouldn't
like
hurt.
too much. Yeah.
Lambie wanted to talk about just how many good cards there are in Marvel Snap, and I'm just going to let him go.
Yeah, so I've come to realize that like every single card, okay, not every single, like almost every card they released in like recent memory has just been like a good card. Like you put it in any deck, if you are missing any other card, and sure, why not? Like, okay, let's start with some of the simple ones. Like, okay, let's start from 2 costs. White Widow. You
Mm-hmm.
put White Widow in any deck, are you really very upset to play a 2 neck? No, you're not upset. It's just White Widow. It's just strong, right? Red Guardian. It's like the tech card of my dreams. Like it's proactive. It hits everything. I mean, there are certain things that it like is worse than like sometimes it's worse than Enchantress or Shang, obviously. But like in general, it hits everything. Like you don't even feel bad playing it on curve, hitting a random Jeff, hitting a Nightcrawler, hitting I don't know, just something. It becomes a 3/5, right? So and even like to a certain extent, Cannonball feels like a whatever card. Like you play it in anything and it's pretty strong. I would
Sorry, I was like, what do you mean by a whatever card?
yeah, I mean like a whatever deck card. Like you
Yes.
can play Cannonball in like anything. You play Cannonball. I'm playing Cannonball in like my normal Annihilus bounce, by the way, and it's doing a lot of work. Like they've been printing so many cards which you can just literally put into any deck, and I like it personally. Like I feel like the last time there was a card like that was like Nico. I think Nico was one of the cards that you could reliably play in like many decks and you don't really care. So now I feel like there's a lot of those cards. Any other cards that you think that I missed out that could be in
Yeah.
this category?
Yes.
Oh, Nocturne.
U.S.
Nocturne.
Agent. Nocturne? Yeah, sure. U.S. Agent
Yeah, I'm so not
is.
high on US Agent. Sell it to me. I'm so not
Oh
high on that
my
card.
god. He plays for
Okay,
like
okay.
211 every game. He's just a 211. Have not lived until you have played a U.S. Agent into your opponent's Doctor Doom. That's
Okay,
a
fine,
one
fine.
power Doom bot. That card is ridiculous.
Dude,
Like,
I'm so not high on that card, man. I need to play
oh
more
my
US Agent.
god. I went and pulled up a list. And I want you to pick the 4, let's say the 5 worst cards actually, okay? Pick the
Okay.
5 worst cards out of this list. It's every card they've released. We're going to go 18 deep, okay? The last
Okay.
18 cards that have come out. You ready?
Yeah. Okay.
Nomura, Sage, Blink, Nocturne, Valentina, White Widow, Red
Bro, there's so much.
Guardian, US Agent, Baron Zemo, Red Hulk, War Machine, Cannonball. Mockingbird, Hope Summers, Pixie, Proxima, Corvus, and Cull. Those are the last 18 cards.
Dude, shit, they are all good. Like,
There's like
they're
2
all
bad ones in
insane,
there.
dude.
It's
Okay,
insane.
okay. War Machine, Valentina, bottom 5, I
Yes.
think.
War Machine,
But damn, the
Valentina.
rest.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Baron Zemo question mark, Namora question mark, and then picking the 5th one is actually ridiculous because you're like looking at Proxima, Corvus, Cull.
Yeah, but Proxima Corvus enables the hell out thing. Proxima makes this card good.
Yeah.
Zemo, like the fact that Namora is straight up bottom 5 without even many questions asked is crazy as to how good the rest of the cards were printed, right? Like the rest of the cards that were printed in the last few months, like the fact that Namora was like no questions bottom 5, and we actually did think that she was a decent card previously, just goes to show like how good like everything that has come out recently is. Like even Sage is definitely not bottom 5 for me. Sage is like
Sage
I
is
think
amazing.
top 10.
Yeah.
I think Sage is top 10, yeah. Crazy, man. Yeah, every card is good. Like, there's so many just good cards that they've printed recently.
Finally, Lambie Series thinks that Captain America is real. I doubt this a little bit, but he does believe it.
Okay, wait. So, when I say it's real, I mean it's really something you need to at least think about right now. Like, Captain America was the last card on my mind for like 1.5 years. Like, no one, it's like Punisher level of no one gives a crap. But like now, in that ongoing deck with 11 ongoing cards and the Spectrum, I would say Captain America actually gives quite a reasonable stat boost. Also, people are playing this in Cerebro too. I don't know where they got this idea, but it actually makes sense. Like people are actually playing this card in Cerebro
I
too.
suggested it as a joke in my video.
No, but it's not just a joke. Like people are actually doing it, and it's doing stuff. Like so, I feel like Captain America. The moment you see, okay, so now the moment you see like multiple ongoing cards, right? You really need to think about Captain America. How does it affect the current game state? Because like in that ongoing deck, I do think Captain America adds quite a bit of stats. So as much as no, I don't think it's like a tier 1 deck. No, I don't think it's a tier 1 card. It's maybe not even like a tier 1.5 card, but like it's something that you need to consider right now. Like it's something that people will put into their decks, and they really will believe that it boosts their deck, which it does. It does boost the ongoing deck like by a certain bit. So I think what they did with Captain America was good, right? I feel like in a few other videos we've been talking about like buffing unplayable cards, and Captain America comes up often, right? So I do think that like they did something good with Captain America. Did it get the Claw treatment? No, Claw is just an infinitely better card. But like I would say Captain America is definitely something that you need to consider now when you think of like, oh, am I going to lose to an ongoing deck, and how will I lose to an ongoing deck? Yeah.
I agree you have to consider it. I think one of the things that I really like about it, what they did with the buff, is it is a plausible budget US agent now. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like one of the things that deck is really trying to do is like win the gene lane in a guaranteed way. And so it has US agent, it has Mojo, and now it has Captain America that can do that as well. And that kind of thing is just a very, very strong thing to have in your back pocket, where it's like, this is maybe not the best in its slot, but it has some upside because obviously it's good if your opponent is playing small stuff into there and US Agent does nothing there. There's a reasonable argument that like this is actually just a reasonable card to run, and it can replace a card a lot of people don't own. And I'm very happy for that. I do love to see when they sort of reduce the delta between an expensive card and the budget replacement, and they definitely reduced the delta in this case. Like it is now not very far off, and it was previously insanely far off. You were playing Punisher if you didn't have US Agent. It was horrible.
Yeah, I just also want to say that like now that I'm thinking about it, like because we just talked a bit on the previous topic about cards that people just generally can play in any deck right now, right? If you realize, right, like if you rewind 6 months, like everyone plays around like a Shang, right? Like Shang was like 6 months ago, Shang was like the only thing that you like realistically like play around. Now, like based on the recent releases, you think of stuff like, okay, I need to not like get this Widow's Kiss on my board, so I need to play around White Widow. Then Sage stats, I need to count Sage stats. Now I need to count Red Guardian as well, getting rid of my lowest like power effect. I need to now also count maybe Captain America. I need to count if Cannonball will blow my biggest card out of the location. Like there's like so many things that you need to actively think about right now to play around. It's kind of interesting. Like it used to be like just Shang, right? Now there's like so many different things that people can play in their many decks that you need to think about playing around.
All right, y'all. On that bombshell, it is time to end. Remember to subscribe to Lambie Series. He's still making his way towards 10K followers. Hit the subscribers, 10K subscribers. That's what it is on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on the bottom of this video. It should be just below him. Make sure you hit that. And as always, I've been KMBest. Lambie, take us out.
Thank you so much for being here with us. If you like this video, do subscribe. Please do subscribe. I'm almost at 10K, and we will see you guys on the next one on KM's channel. Bye bye.